How do you do? Allow me to introduce myself.
I am the last sane sports fan.
I am a genius by trade.
And welcome to The View from the Midwest.
I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly.
Hello everyone and welcome to another View from the Midwest. As you can see from the shirt today, I'm going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, the St. Louis Blues. And before you all turn out, it's not going to be just a blues-centric episode, although it will be very heavy. We're going to kind of spread our wings into the other topics as we go along, but it is going to be mainly St. Louis Blues episode because they say talk about what you know, and the St. Louis Blues are what I know. Right now, the St. Louis Blues are currently in another tailspin. We don't want to overextend that idea too heavily because the St. Louis Blues are still in an enviable position compared to a lot of teams in the NHL who are currently trying to get into the playoffs. And the St. Louis Blues, although they haven't clinched a playoff berth, are still in a spot that a lot of teams would really love to be. The bottom line, though, is this is the second year for the St. Louis Blues to where they have just fallen on their faces come springtime. There's something about the month of March and then into the month of April. I just can't really put my finger on it, quite frankly. And to me, it looks like a situation where the St. Louis Blues almost get to March, and the past few years they've had such a good record that it almost reeks of a situation where they feel, well, even though we don't really have it mathematically locked up, we've got ourselves in the playoffs, we're in a good position, so we just need to get ourselves to the mid-April, and then we'll be fine after that. We don't need to worry about these last few regular season games. Well, quite frankly, the Blues backed their way into the playoffs last year, and they're looking to do the same again this year. And much like Uncle Tony Kornheiser on PTI goes to the glasses when he feels he needs to get things right, I'm going to go to the computer here to really kind of let you guys know what's going on. And I'm not going to put up a full screen graphic with the standings right now because they're so fluid. They seem to change just about every night, so I'm not going to waste your time with that. Right now, the St. Louis Blues currently sit on 99 points. They're 3 points behind first place Nashville in the Central Division. They're only 1 point ahead of Chicago for that third spot in the division. They're only 4 points ahead of Minnesota, who currently sits in the first wild card spot. So St. Louis could honestly, if not miss out on the playoffs, they could fall from a spot to where they thought they were going to get maybe even the President's Trophy, maybe the top spot in the West, to a wild card spot. It is very plausible given the fact that the St. Louis Blues have to play playoff teams or playoff contenders for the rest of the season. The St. Louis Blues, in their schedule coming up, they have to play against Calgary, who is sitting on 91 points as of today, and obviously that's going to change at any time. Then on Friday, they got to play against Dallas. Then they get a day off. Then they get to play Chicago on the road on Sunday. Then they have another day off. Then they get to play Winnipeg, who is currently still fighting for a playoff berth. They're in the last wild card spot, trying to fend off the ever-present Stanley Cup champion LA Kings. Then after that, the St. Louis Blues get to face Chicago again. And then they get to play the Minnesota Wild, who are currently one of the hottest teams in the league. So things aren't getting any easier for the St. Louis Blues. And one of the things that's upsetting is this entire team-wide lack of ability to come up with a big game. Somebody gets injured. Well, they seem to use that as an excuse instead of somebody stepping up and doing the job. TJ O'Shea talked about it last night. He thinks that they're getting too much information from the coaching staff, not allowing players to just play their game. Maybe that's the case. Coach Hitchcock is a cerebral coach. He does like to get in people's heads. We've seen it just with the simple fact of things that the fans can see in terms of line changes that haven't really made a whole lot of sense. They haven't produced a whole lot of different results than the ones that you were getting with the original line combinations. So why do you change it? Well, only Coach Hitchcock can answer that. St. Louis Blues are getting a few injuries now. We had hoped that they had gotten those out of the way at the beginning of the season and kind of in the middle stages. Now they seem to be picking up more injuries. Alexander Steen was out for the previous game against the Vancouver Canucks. He should be back on the weekend. But now Vladimir Tarasenko seems to have picked up a bit of a knock. We don't know his situation yet. Last word, he had his leg wrapped up, his right leg, and was walking with a limp. Hopefully by the time the weekend rolls around, it's just some sort of bruising, and he'll be ready to go. But another thing that the St. Louis Blues are not doing very well right now is defending. Now, I'm not going to sit there and blow smoke up your butt and say that the Blues are one of the worst defensive teams in the league, because they're not. As of teams, if the playoffs started today, the St. Louis Blues only have the Chicago Blackhawks, who have allowed far fewer goals. And only Minnesota, Nashville have allowed fewer, and it's only 2 and 4 respectively there. So the St. Louis Blues have done a good job on the defensive side. They've only allowed 190 goals on the year, which is pretty good. And in terms of teams that have scored more goals, St. Louis has very few in that category. In fact, of the Western Conference teams that, if the playoffs started today, there's only one team that scored as many. But the Blues pick the worst times to have those things fall apart. They're like the St. Louis Cardinals of a couple years ago. When Carlos Beltran was on the St. Louis Cardinals, they led the league in runs. But quite frankly, it was fool's gold, because the bottom line with that team was, yes, they led the league in runs as an entire statistic, but when it came down to crunch time, the St. Louis Cardinals of that year were either going to beat you 10-2, or they were going to lose 2-1 or 1-0. And that's what the St. Louis Blues, quite frankly, are doing right now. They scored a boatload of goals at the beginning part, quite frankly, all the way through about 75% of the season. Now we get down to the last 25%, and things are starting to fall apart. They've got to get something turned around. And another topic that I want to bring up real quickly about the St. Louis Blues, it was brought up by one of my friends on Facebook, and it bears repeating. Brian Elliott is not a bad goaltender. Jake Allen is not a bad goaltender. Each one on their own bring monumental saves to the table. But right now, and throughout the course of their careers, however short they may have been, they also let up some bad goals. And the Blues have come to terms with this a little bit, because this tandem has given them cost efficiency, which has allowed them to make moves in other areas. But when it comes down to crunch time, when it comes down to the heat, the fire that is the playoffs, you have to have top-notch goaltending. And the point that was made on Facebook, and as I said, it bears repeating, who of the playoff goaltenders would you put up just on paper and what people feel about them? Who would you put the St. Louis Blues goaltenders against? I don't really know. The St. Louis Blues do fairly well against Winnipeg. They have Andre Pavlich as their goaltender. But ever since the Blues last beat Winnipeg, he's gone pretty much undefeated with a pretty stellar goals against average. You look at some of the other teams, Pekka Rinne with Nashville. I wouldn't put Brian Elliott or Jake Allen up against them. Chicago's got Corey Crawford, and while Crawford can be a bit of an enigma, a bit of a head case every once in a while, he's still got the playoff experience all the way to the Stanley Cup Championship, so he has the edge there. You look at Anaheim, they've got better goaltending than the St. Louis Blues. Vancouver, they have Eddie Lack, they have Ryan Miller. Either way you go there, they seem to be able to knock off the St. Louis Blues. Calgary's got Jonas Hiller. He's a Blues killer. You look at the wild card teams. You have Minnesota, Devin Dubnyk. He's the reason Minnesota is even in a playoff spot right now, because they started off the year so terribly. But unfortunately for St. Louis fans, he's kind of come alive after getting out of the doldrums that are Edmonton. And now he's really picked it up. You got Winnipeg, as I mentioned, with Pavlich. He's the only one that St. Louis could really have an even footing against. But right now, as the standings bear out, St. Louis would not face him. You look at the teams that are trying to get in. You have Los Angeles. Well, we've seen what Jonathan Quick can do against the St. Louis Blues. And then you have the Dallas Stars, who realistically probably are not going to get in. But they have Kari Lehtonen, who has also been a Blues killer in recent years as well. Now, the St. Louis Blues tried to address the goaltending situation last year, and due to their free fall now, I shouldn't call it a free fall, it's a bit of a slide. It has a chance to become a free fall here in the next week or so. But due to the fact that the St. Louis Blues are doing pretty much the same thing they did last year, where they had a chance to clinch a playoff spot on April 1st, did not do so, backed their way in, went on a losing streak heading into the playoffs. They're doing pretty much the same thing now. They had a chance to clinch a playoff spot yesterday, didn't do so. April's going to come and go, and the St. Louis Blues will not have played a game on April 1st, so basically the situation repeats itself. But obviously Ryan Miller was not necessarily the problem. It's the St. Louis Blues team. Whether it's goaltending, whether it's defense, whether it's offense, doesn't matter. The whole entire team is not producing right now, and they better get their heads out of their butts. Otherwise, it's going to be another first-round exit, because no matter who they play, it's going to be a tough team. I don't care if you manage to really get on a hot streak and pass up Nashville. You're going to have to play potentially Winnipeg or Los Angeles, as the stats bear out right now. Well, Winnipeg is one of the hardest hitting teams, and you don't think they're going to turn that up in the playoffs? Are they going to be playoff ready? Maybe not. They haven't been in the playoffs for a few years. But anytime you could be that physical, you can wear down a team. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen. You don't know if Tarasenko is really hurt. Injuries always play a part. If the St. Louis Blues have to play the Chicago Blackhawks, which if the playoffs started today would be the case, St. Louis has not yet proven that they can beat the Chicago Blackhawks. Maybe that would be a good thing. Some people argued that, oh, well, if you get in the playoffs, maybe you want to see Chicago first round. Maybe you want to get him before Kane has a chance to come back. I argue against that simply because the Chicago Blackhawks have done a stellar job without one of their top scorers. In fact, they may have even played better. I don't have statistics right in front of me that would bear out their games with him versus the games against, goals scored, goals against, all that kind of stuff. If I played the Chicago Blackhawks, would I rather not have to see Kane for 5, 6, 7 games? Yes, but I don't want to play the Chicago Blackhawks first round if you can avoid it. The bottom line is, the playoffs are coming up. It should be an exciting time, and unfortunately for St. Louis fans, you don't seem to be able to look forward to the playoffs because you don't necessarily know how your team is going to go in there. They have to play against playoff ready or playoff contenders for the rest of the regular season, and they better figure something out. I don't want to hear this BS that TJ Oshie was saying about getting too much information. If that's the case, you need to have a players-only meeting and say, hey, the coach has given us this. We're going to start to try to filter it out ourselves and play our own game. And if he gets mad, so be it. But if we come up with wins, then at least we're being productive. If not, then you need to start listening to the coach, because this team has already gone through at least 2 coaches, if not 3. They got Andy Murray fired. They got Davis Payne fired. They're looking to get Coach Hitchcock fired now if he doesn't do very well in the playoffs again. You can't keep going through coaches and not looking in the mirror. This team wants to win a Stanley Cup. They're talented enough to win a Stanley Cup, but right now it is up here. They got to figure something out. That's the View from the Midwest for today. Until next time, I'll see you then.
I remember when I lost my mind. so much space.